Hi everyone, I am Pastor Peggy from Slave Lake, Alberta.
And I'm Pastor Diane from Norfolk, New York. Welcome to Find Out Friday.
Woohoo! Find out. I love finding out things.
I know, it's so much fun, and I think this new direction where we're trying to find out things that will help us in the now, in this time of crisis, and as we go forward from here.
Yeah, I really like that because there are things that we do need to know now, and there are components that we bring forward with us, into the future, and that's what I love about learning. Because once you have this knowledge, you can move forward with it, and that's why I am so excited about today.
Yes. Let's just go to the interview. Well, welcome to my favorite niece. I am so happy that you agreed to come on our show and talk with us. First of all, can you tell us your credentials?
So I've got a master's degree in cell biology from the University of Alberta. I'm currently working on a PhD in pharmacology from Dalhousie University, and I am also a research coordinator for the St. John Regional Hospital in laboratory medicine.
You're working on a research project right now, I understand?
So through the hospital, we have been involved in trying to get some of these trials kind of up and running. So one in particular, we're looking particularly in the New Brunswick population, but this is part of a larger study, and it's more of a registry. So one of the things is with this novel coronavirus, we just don't really know as much as we would like to, obviously, and the more knowledge we have, the better we can tackle any problem. So this one is looking at when we're getting patients in, what are the different comorbidities? So we do know that different, so if someone has different disorders as well, so for example, heart disease, those that have heart disease are more likely to have a negative effect with COVID versus say somebody that's young and healthy. Age is another thing. So we're looking at what are these factors that are contributing to either a worse outcome or a better outcome. We're also trying to get some samples that we're actually sending off to the National Research Council, and they're going to start looking at the proteomics, so looking at what's all the different things in the blood. So proteomics is kind of, let's just look at every protein that's in that blood, so we can figure out, okay, what's going on, what do we have more of, what do we have less of? Is there some new things in here that aren't normal? So what is it actually doing in our cells? What is it doing? There's also another clinical trial that they're looking at using the serum from people that have recovered from COVID. So when someone's recovered, they should be producing antibodies. And this is something that happens with all viral infections. Once your immune system has, actually defeated this virus, because that's how most viruses are defeated, is our immune system kicks in. It's like, no, I see you, I'm gonna take you out. But what it does, and at the same time, is there's another type of cell in there that says, I'm going to remember you if I see you again. And that's where the antibodies come in. It produces these antibodies. And those antibodies, say that virus comes back, and this is why, usually you don't get the same virus again, or the main reason vaccines work is it's literally, we give you a little bit of the virus to make your body go, okay, yeah, I got this thing, I remember you now. So the next time I see it, or next time your body sees it, it can attack it very quickly and makes it so it cannot make you sick. So what they're trying to do is take these antibodies from people that have recovered and then use that as a treatment as well.
How long do you think until a vaccine is found or developed?
I'm thinking, if I'm being hopeful, end of the year. There are some groups that are suggesting we might have one as early as September. That might be a little optimistic. That being said, there are vaccines that are currently in phase 1 clinical trials. So a phase 1 clinical trial it's looking at a very small group of people, and it's just looking, is it safe? So a phase 2 clinical trial it's a little bigger than phase 1, but it's still a relatively small amount of numbers. And that's when you're starting to look, is it efficacious? So does it actually work? The difference between phase 2 and phase 3 is the size of the trial. So a phase 2 is relatively small. It might have maybe a couple hundred, where phase 3s tend to be thousands of people. You are going to see things moving along quicker, because one downside to a lot of clinical trials is they take a lot of time. But you are seeing that a lot of the red tape that we normally have there, people are willing to be like, okay, no, we're going to fast track this.
Okay.
It will still undergo the same review. It will still have the same safety precautions. So it'll still have to show it's safe and it's effective. But some of the red tape and more the bureaucracy that comes with some of these, they're going to try to fast track a little bit more.
One of the comments that you often see is that even the scientists don't know what they're doing, because one day they say it's one way and the next day they say it's something else, and they can't even figure this out. Why is that?
We are adapting as we learn more. So it's not that we don't know what we're doing. Unfortunately, there is quite a bit we just don't know, and that's because it is new, but this is why we are researching it. So on top of I've kind of mentioned some of these clinical trials, there's also a lot of basic research that's going into the cell level, looking at them in animal models that are just trying to figure out, how is this thing working? As we progress and as we learn more, we might end up changing what we think we know, and that's because we've actually been able to look at it further. Sometimes, this is why we have those phased clinical trials. So I mentioned how there's the different phases. We do that on purpose because sometimes it'll work at a small level, but once we go to a larger population, it doesn't.
Right.
And yes, you are going to see things continuously evolve as we learn more. So when we're changing the recommendations, it's not because we have no idea what we're doing. We're just throwing something out there. We're going with, okay, based on the new knowledge we've obtained, we are modifying our guidelines to fit that. And this is why, like I said, we are putting a lot of resources into researching this so we can gain that knowledge so that we can adapt to give the best recommendations, and therefore hopefully decrease, basically flatten this curve and make it so that we're not going to get overrun in our intensive care units, which is the biggest thing. Because unfortunately, when you do have that situation happen, more people die.
The reason why we've been asked to sort of shelter in place is because we don't want to overwhelm our health system.
Yes.
Is that basically why we've been asked to stay home?
It is partially, but also one of the things is these big gatherings, viruses, they don't care. They're not really all that picky about who they go to. They're very much like, oh, you guys are gathering? Yeah, I'm going to come along with you, and I'm going to go to the next guy, and then they're going to take it home. So the sheltering in place is also, okay, it's decreasing the ability for this virus to spread. But the sheltering in place is one, yes, by decreasing the spread, it does decrease the strain on the healthcare system. But it also will decrease the amount of people that get it. So one thing we have found is the people that are not sheltering in place are usually the people, unfortunately, that are getting this too. Yeah. So the shelter in place is doing two things. Yes, it's making it so that we're not overrunning, we're not increasing those caseload, and therefore not overrunning our hospitals. Because if we overrun the hospitals, and unfortunately, it's going to get to the point. There have been places where, like Italy is a prime example of this, where they literally had to choose who's getting ventilators and who's not. And they actually put it that if you're above this age, we won't put on a ventilator because they didn't have any. In addition to that, the other issue is if the hospitals are overrun with everything else, say if you have other issues, because other issues are still popping up, people still get sick besides COVID, there also wouldn't be a bed available for them as well. So in addition to those that die of COVID, you'd have more people dying from other things as well.
Then what's the difference between going to like a church and spending an hour and a half there, or going out grocery shopping? Like, what's the difference in those two scenarios?
So some part of it is time of contact. So in a church, you're probably going to have more time that you're in contact with the person. And this is why they've given that 6-foot distance. And even if most people have probably been to the grocery store recently, have seen that you're supposed to be 6 feet apart from people. When you're in a church, you're going to be in closer contact for more period of time. And that's why one of the things about closing down churches, not just churches, but anywhere where you have these large gatherings. Right. It's because we don't want to have a prolonged period of time, and therefore more of a chance for that virus to jump from one person to the next.
We don't have this regulation here in the States, but I know that Pastor Peggy has mentioned that in Alberta, at any public gatherings, they're not allowed to sing. Can you speak to that?
My guess would be it's because if you're singing, you're probably expelling further, right? So one of the things is 6 foot is the average droplet, and how far that droplet can spread. If say you're singing and therefore you're projecting further, or if you're coughing, it could go further is another thing. So it's also why, cover your cough, don't just cough, which people should be doing anyways. But it's that it's spreading further. So therefore that 6 foot distance has to be further.
And when all of this started, I remember saying to somebody when I was disinfecting the church, this has probably highlighted things that we've been missing and stuff that we should be doing. We should have been doing before, but we will definitely be doing from now on. Can you highlight some of the things that have come to light because of COVID that you hope the general population will just make it a habit?
Number 1, wash your hands. It doesn't matter. Cold and flu seasons, the best thing you can do to prevent yourself from getting cold and flus is washing your hands. Hands are dirty. So the 20 seconds thing is nothing to do with COVID. It is just how you should be washing your hands. So this is why you can use a thing like happy birthday. And it's not just, put the soap and water on and you're done. In between your fingers, over top, the knuckles, making sure you're cleaning between the thumbs. So your entire hand has to be cleaned, not just and done.
Mythbusters.
Yeah, but if people are wondering why that 20 seconds is the detergent, so that soap actually helps to break up the capsule that makes up the virus. We're touching all sorts of surfaces, wiping down surfaces that are commonly touched in buildings, because that's also where things can spread. Being cognizant of what you're touching as well. So that's why when you're out and about, they don't recommend gloves, because people will touch everything with the gloves and then they don't realize the gloves are now contaminated. You cannot touch anything else with those gloves or the virus passes. So if you're touching your phone with your gloves, don't do that. Cleaning your phone on a regular basis isn't a bad idea to take a disinfectant to your phone. Your phone gets very dirty. Coughing into your elbow, because again, you don't want to cough into your hand and then go shake somebody's hand. Generally, if you're not feeling well, don't go out and about. Try to limit your exposure. Follow the guidelines. Whenever possible, keep 6 feet apart. Be kind to people as well. I've definitely noticed sometimes going to the grocery store, the cashiers seem way more stressed out, and from what I'm hearing from some people, they are getting a lot of crap, which is not needed. We're all stressed out. Nobody is doing this because we like it. Just be kind to them in general. It doesn't have to be just during a pandemic. That should be something that we're constantly doing. Because, your frontline workers, they're stressed out about a lot of this stuff too, but yet they're dealing with people that are stressed out and they're taking it out on the workers too. Unfortunately, I've heard of too many people doing that, and I'm just like, it's not their fault. Just a little bit of kindness goes a long way.
Yeah.
Wish your cashier have a good day, just a nice smile.
Here's an idea for you folks listening. Write down in the comments, what can you do to just make somebody's day that's working the front lines, the cashier, the gas attendant, whatever. We'd love to hear your comments.
Mm-hmm. And when you do bring home fruits and vegetables, definitely ensure you're washing. That should have been done beforehand, but still make sure you're washing things.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've actually done that where I pretty much wipe down most things that come into the house before I put it away.
When you're out shopping, be very intentional about what you're touching. Don't touch the products on the shelf unless in your mind you've committed to buy that product.
Because the less people are touching what you're buying, the less likely things are going. So if everyone practices that, only touch the things you intend to buy, you're also going to limit that spread. Because the virus only lives on surfaces for so long. It's not as if it's indefinite, but it can be 2 to 3 days depending on the surface.
And how do you tell that line between I've got allergies or COVID? When do I know which is which?
And the only way to 100% know it would be testing. But that being said, if say this is something like her allergy symptoms are probably very similar from what she's had in previous years. So if she's been outside and she's coming in and she's sneezing because, regular allergies, that's normal. So a lot of it's going to have to be comparing to what is normal for you versus anything abnormal. A lot of these they have kind of preface them like, a new onset of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because some of these symptoms are very common, like I said.
What about people who have breathing issues such as asthma and stuff, breathing through the mask, how do you have any ideas or suggestions on how they can work through that?
I think it's going to come down to the type of mask. So one of the issues is a lot of them being, fabrics aren't always as breathable. So if they can get a fabric that might be somewhat breathable, or if they can get surgical masks, it might help a little bit, but there's no way to really, because that's the thing, masks are meant to try to stop you from breathing too far out.
Right.
If you can avoid distance, like if you can put 6 feet between you, that is better than mask will do.
So we, from the bottom of our hearts, I know we thank you, and we thank you for all of the hard work that you're putting in, because I'm sure it's hours and hours and hours above and beyond. So thank you very much, and thank you for taking the time to come on.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. Hopefully everyone at least gets something out of it.
Now, smarts seem to run in the family, don't you think?
Well, yeah, and they rub off on friends.
Well, for sure.
There's going to be the full extended version of this interview because it is jam-packed full of content. That will be on our YouTube channel, so go over there for the extended version. We'll put the link down here in the comments.
Something I've started doing, I started it mid-April. I have a calendar in my home office, and whenever I leave the house, I write down where I've been. Because, first of all, if I happen to contract the disease, then I can say, this is where I've been. But the flip side of that is if somebody else has had it and a notice goes out, if you were at such and such a store on such and such a day, contact us. I can go and look at my calendar.
The government of Alberta has a Track Together app that you can download onto your phone. And basically it does that for you. Every day I get notifications telling me if there was somebody in some place or just what I can do to keep safe. There's all kinds of feelings about it, and it's okay to have all those different feelings. We're entitled to have those feelings, and you can download the app. It's your choice, and that's a really important component. People all over the world have been saying, to be able to test, diagnose, and then trace that person in order to get that wake will stop it from taking off again. So from Slave Lake, Alberta and Slave Lake Wesleyan Church, yay, I am Pastor Peggy Yetman.
And from Norfolk, New York and Norfolk Wesleyan Church, I'm Pastor Diane. We will see you next week for Tasty Tuesday. Yay! Until then, be safe,
be healthy, and be the church.
The church. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
My favorite conspiracy that I heard was, of course, Steven coming up with this one. It's a conspiracy by Netflix, who actually spread this to get more people to stay home and watch Netflix.